question. What are we talking about?
Yeah, what are we talking about?
We're doing the other half of our year 6 episode.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Regrettable Century. Welcome to part 2 of our year 6 in review. We were going to deal with other stuff because I think we pretty thoroughly covered like geopolitics and the election last time, but some stuff has happened since then, and maybe we should talk about it, I think. First and foremost, I think probably the most important thing that's happened since the fall of the Soviet Union is the fact that we are now engaged, and by we I mean NATO, is now engaged in a shooting war with Russia for all intents and purposes.
Like directly, and not in the way that we were, which is indirectly.
Now it's directly. Now U.S. military personnel are taking satellite data, giving it to controllers on the ground who input the data into devices, which I'm guessing there's probably a Ukrainian that presses the button to fire the
American-made and shipped weapons. Yeah.
The thinnest veneer of proxy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think that this removes that veneer of proxy.
Right, and before the U.S. before Biden gave the approval to do this, Putin had said, this is a red line, and if NATO does this, I will regard this as NATO initiating open warfare with Russia.
Right, which is what happened. And I might quibble with the idea that Biden is the one who gave the order to shoot those missiles. Because
fair enough.
No one is actually sure, as far as the press is concerned, who gave the order, and no one on the in the U.S. side of the issue has clarified. So I'm thinking it's
maybe while he was wandering through the rainforest, he had a vision or something that we needed to launch missiles directly into Russia.
It's either Sullivan or Blinken, or a combination of the two. Some appendage of the vampire blob that runs our foreign policy apparatus.
I don't think it's hard to imagine this overdetermined outcome coming out of the blob, the foreign policy blob that exists in DC.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And So in response to that, Russia fired a missile at Ukraine specifically, but it is somewhat of an escalation because it was the first time usage of either an MRV or an MIRV. I'm not exactly sure because
a hypersonic missile.
Right. Well, they've often fired hypersonic missiles, but the multiple reentry vehicles. Right. So, basically, hypersonic missiles that, it would be like a ballistic missile, and not an ICBM, because an ICBM means for intercontinental, and this one was a medium-range ballistic missile, which I've heard, and I'm not really sure, is just a retrofitted intercontinental ballistic missile that's made to go shorter distances. But anyway, so what it does is it gets up into the atmosphere, and this one apparently seems to skate along the atmosphere just above the Earth's atmosphere. And then when it re-enters, it breaks apart into multiple warheads that are typically meant to fire several nuclear warheads at several targets all at once. So you could obliterate basically every site worth hitting on the east coast of the United States with one MIRV. But this specifically just shot probably like tungsten rods or something like that into a military complex in Ukraine. And that military complex, I've heard a few things. I've heard it played down that it wasn't that important because all it did was repair Bradley and M1 Abrams and Leopard tanks. So it was a repair facility. I've heard from a guy whose job it is to study ballistic missiles and stuff like that, says that it was a factory that the Russians knew about because it was an old Soviet factory that made ballistic missiles. So it's basically hitting a Ukrainian factory that made the short-range ballistic missiles that they've been using that aren't the ATACMS or the other ones that they've been using so far. So Basically, it was just like a show of like, hey, look what we've got. We could use this wherever we want, and there's nothing you could do about it. Because once those, you could shoot down the missile while it's on its way to the target, but once those MRV or MIRV projectiles break up and start coming down, they're far too fast to intercept. Nothing can intercept them.
Yeah, honestly, like I know this is not something people talk about a lot, or not something that people on the American left talk about a lot anyways. But like, this is just another example of a very, very measured, restrained response from the Russian Federation. Like,
right.
There was a display of how much firepower they actually have.
Right. It was sort of like when ships, shoot like something, you would shoot like a cannon nearby another ship as a warning
shot across the bow.
Shot across the bow, saying like, "Hey, we could have hit you," but not actually hitting them on purpose as a sort of display a threat, but it's not actually engaging in active, significant active destruction or whatever. Yeah, very measured response, and I don't know if you agree, Chris, but seems to me at least partially impacted by the fact that Putin is highly aware of the fact that Biden is a lame duck presidency about to be replaced by Trump, who is openly saying to the press and I think I heard in meeting with Putin that hey, please don't escalate because as soon as I get in office, I'm drawing down.
Right. That's my theory anyway. I think that Putin probably has other things up his sleeve. Like, I would give, if I were Putin, I would give hypersonic anti-ship missiles to the Houthis.
Yes, that'd be so incredible. That'd be amazing. I would love that.
Which is something that the State Department has mentioned as a possibility. But they were mentioning that like way back in the summer. They're like, as a reason to not escalate the situation. In fact, the Pentagon has always said and still says that giving ATACMS missiles to, not giving them to Ukraine, because Ukraine's been using them for the last, year and a half now to like almost no effect. But allowing them to fire deeper into Russian territory would have no significant effect on stemming Russia's steady onslaught. So there would be no point in escalating for very little, if any, gain. And the way that it breaks down right now is that Ukraine has 50 of these missiles that have like a decent sized payload, but nothing monumental. Like they hit a Russian base, a command facility, and they killed a bunch of Russian officers and stuff like that, but they didn't even destroy the entire facility with 6 of them. They fired 6 of them. I think one of them actually hit the base. And then they blew up an open-air ammo depot with some of their other missiles. But as it stands, they only have 50. And the United States doesn't have any more to give them. Well, they might have more to give them because we probably have some that are like, in a warehouse somewhere. But we do not make them anymore. We haven't made them in 10 years. We were supposed to have replaced it with a newer, better missile. But that's still, quote unquote, stuck in development. So you know what that means is like someone at like Raytheon or McDonnell Douglas or whatever is gouging the shit out of the deal that was being made with the U.S. military to fleece the U.S. taxpayers for as much money as they possibly could. So the same thing goes for France. And which is, I think what are they, Taurus missiles, or is that Germany? I don't know. So France and England both have similar kinds of missiles, but not enough of them to actually do anything. So essentially, this is just like poking a hornet's nest with really no chance of actually changing the course of the war.
One significant thing is that the Biden administration will be able to say, well, we did everything we could, and then Trump is he's likely to wind it down somehow. And
probably.
The Biden administration can say, look, every single step of the way we did as much as we could, and that's as much as we can do, so that our legacy is secure.
Yeah, it certainly is.
No one knows what Trump is going to do, so Trump could drive a hard bargain with Zelensky and say, look, you have to negotiate now, otherwise you're completely cut off, right? Or, Trump could do the thing that a lot of people expect him to do. A lot of the more Russia hawk people on the Republican side expect him to do, which is say, look, no more freebies. If we're giving you missiles, you're giving us mineral rights. You're giving us more and more and more parts of your country, which they've already been basically selling off. Right. Parts of their infrastructure and their country to other parts of their country, and probably mineral rights as well. I don't really know, to the United States in order to have this slow trickle of weapons coming from the United States, which a lot of people criticize Biden and say it's because Biden's not releasing enough, but it really is. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough.
Yeah, that's what we can do.
Right. That was brought into focus with the fact that we didn't have anything to send to Israel at first, after October 7th last year.
I think if Trump's cabinet appointments are an indication of anything, it's more the latter thing you said rather than the former. Mm-hmm. It's very likely to. Yeah.
That's my understanding is the problem that Trump has with implementing his conservative isolationist foreign policy is that his bench to implement that's available to him to implement that policy is extremely shallow. There is a very, 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 very deeply embedded and robust foreign policy establishment that he's running directly counter against with his policies that he's running for office on, and probably holds personally to some degree. But we all know Trump's moral and political commitments are about a millimeter deep, and he'll give up on anything just because it's
people like
so
him.
Hard. Yeah, so people like him or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
His national
having a lack of a bench to draw on to fill out his cabinet with these people who will implement this isolationist policy, it seems very likely that that's an easy place for him to get sort of overrun by the neocon establishment.
Right. Yeah. Sort of like the only good that he could have possibly have done with Korea last year. Well, his last presidency was totally undermined by Mike Pompeo and what's his name? The walrus mustache guy, war criminal.
Bolton. Bolton.
Right. Yeah. By Bolton. And in this instance, he's got like a cabinet full of just blood-sucking neocon ghouls. With the sole exception, I think, of Tulsi Gabbard, who is
even
also
her though.
But she's a Zionist. She
straddles that. Yeah.
She's a Zionist, so
she's opposed to every war after the fact and supports every war during it. You know.
Yeah. She's always been opposed to any conflict with Russia, though, specifically over Syria. Yeah. That was her big thing. So that's why all the Democrats say that she's bought and paid for by Putin without any kind of fucking evidence whatsoever, of course, because that's just what they say. And if there was evidence, it would be out and she'd be arrested.
That's exactly right.
I mean, the major obvious contradiction in all of this geopolitically is Iran with relation to Russia. That's just, especially depending upon what secret agreements can be made with Russia. That'll be very interesting to see, because he's really going all in with the American first being wedded to Israeli far right Zionist movements and Edelson, all that money which is courting a battle with Iran.
$190 million.
And at the very same time, going all in on ending the war in Ukraine.
It was something like $190 million given to the Trump campaign by Miriam Adelson.
Yeah, on the condition that he support the annexation of the West Bank or something, right?
Yeah.
That's exciting.
It's not going to go well. It's not going to.
It's so funny that there was ever any kind of America First sort of backing of the Trump presidency. Any kind of paleocon support.
It's completely inverted, yeah. More like Israel first.
Yeah, it's definitely an Israel first cabinet that's been selected. And by extension, like, I think that means that because of how many just neocons are in his administration, that he's going to have a neocon foreign policy, just like last time. Yep. The little things that he was able to do, that he tried to do, were undercut, and then the rest of his foreign policy was just the same as Obama's, who... Yes, Obama is a neocon. For all intents and purposes, Obama is a neocon. Hillary Clinton's a neocon.
Yep.
Joe Biden's a neocon. They all share the exact same sort of foreign policy outlook that George W. Bush and
you got to grant Obama his due with his lame duck, Iran nuclear power deal, and
that's true.
Eliminating and lifting the whatever on Cuba, the embargo on Cuba. Both completely thrown in the garbage as soon as Trump took office.
Right. Yeah.
But those were good. Those were good moves. Those were incredible moves.
But one can argue that those were those kinds of measures are able to be put in because they'll be thrown away. Like,
yeah, that's exactly right. Obama was the one that expanded and made it like sort of the backbone of our foreign policy, the drone program.
Yep.
Then he handed it over to Trump,
who did not throw that in the garbage.
No, he did not. And then also just expanding surveillance and covert operations around the world in the name of American hegemony.
Yeah.
Like
going after whistleblowers. Quote unquote.
Yeah, it was. Snowden was arrested, or not arrested, but charged with treason under Obama, and then Chelsea Manning went to prison under Obama. And he drone striked a bunch of weddings and assassinated some American citizens without trial.
Exactly. So. Did for the first time established the precedent of being able to assassinate American citizens abroad without having been even criminally charged with anything at all. Yep. Simply because they, by association or something like that. Additionally, initiating drone strikes into countries that have not been declared, with no war declared on them. That was like a new innovation that he established precedent for, that he handed this power. Now there's a precedent for it. It now exists. Yep. It's now something that presidents do. And then he handed that over to Trump, who expanded it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, people always say that Trump is like the worst president ever. And I would say that hands down, Obama was worse than Trump. Yeah. Like, Obama did much, much more permanent damage to the world. And of course, like by setting precedents, right? So to the legal precedents that the United States uses for things that erode our civil liberties and allow us to project our brutality across the globe. But now I got to say that Biden is going to hands down be one of the worst presidents in American history, just because of how bad he fumbled, like literally everything. Almost got us into a war with Russia. Maybe we will. We
might still do it. Yeah,
might still do it.
But I mean, we are in one right now. We're firing. Yeah. There's not a declared war. We're in a sort of like something more than proxy war, something less than Cold War with Russia, right? I mean, something less than hot war with Russia, and then also aiding and abetting and making possible the not even just aiding and abetting, like making possible the genocide of the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and with Russia, I've seen at least this is probably reflective of the thinking that's going on in the liberal establishment. But I've seen liberals online posting about how nuclear warfare is actually not that big of a deal.
I've seen
that. Nuclear warfare would kill off it would be over in minutes, and it would kill like a bunch of people, but most of humanity would be unscathed, and it would be fine. So
that's one option. That's one possibility. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I bet the setting aside the horror of that in itself, let's even just set that aside. The fact that people are less scared of the possibility of nuclear warfare makes it more likely to happen. It makes escalation
more likely.
Escalation is less scary. It's much more likely to occur because people are like, well, nuclear warfare, we don't want that, but it's not going to block out the sun or something,
Yeah, it underwrites your your attachment to like third worldism for me. Like it's like that outcome is terrible, but it's likely not to come home to us. So talk about losing, not keeping your eyes on the prize. The idea that the end of the world as we know it will happen in a Trump presidency and not in World War III. What reality is this?
God, liberals are literally the most contemptible people on earth.
Truly
like American liberals. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's the height of, to be really cliche, of like an Orwellian doublespeak is modern day liberals. I think it's maybe worse than anything else I can think of.
Right.
Yeah, and just how many people do you know that are quote unquote leftists that voted for liberals for harm reduction purposes?
Yep.
It's like literally, I mean, you could buy American.
Most everybody I know.
American leftists off so easily. What do you mean? We might face hardship? No. I don't mind if we if we start World War III and an entire people is eradicated, as long as we don't face any hardships at home.
Yeah, that's a slight increase in hardships domestically.
Right. Like the idea that Trump is going to set up concentration camps for leftists and trans people is laughable, first of all. Second, that's it. Yeah, it's just laughable. It's like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I was
And you know what? If he does, then maybe these fucking soft-handed liberals would sit up and start doing something rather than just yelling at people to their left online. And if they got serious about militantly opposing this government, then I would take them more seriously as well.
Yeah, but instead what they're doing, the same people that are underestimating nuclear war, the same people are pivoting, some of them are pivoting away from solidarity with trans people and solidarity with the marginalized.
That's right.
Because it's no longer, it's like, this is why we didn't win.
Exactly.
They're very publicly jettisoning identity politics from the, while simultaneously going after Latino men for, I hope you all get deported, shit like that,
Yeah.
I've seen stuff like that all over the place.
The fuck around and find out thing.
Yeah. So love the idea too that like I saw a post today that was like working people are about to get what they deserve for I'm like, cool.
On that note,
you don't need them to win.
No.
So on that note, just a little bit of an update, because last time when we started doing our year in review, all of the California ballots hadn't come back yet, so the gap between Trump and Harris was bigger than it is now. 76.8 million people voted for Donald Trump. 74.3 million people voted for Kamala Harris. But also, almost 90 million Americans just didn't vote. And I think that's
right.
That's more important than anything else.
Eligible voters, right?
God's people right there.
90 million people didn't vote, which means that didn't vote won in a landslide.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the only people that made the logical choice were the people that didn't vote. The only people who definitely got what they expected to get out of an election.
Yeah.
So on that note, after about a half an hour, we could finally finish tying up loose ends from the last half of our year 6 in review. And let's start this one now.
Okay.
Updates in our personal lives.
We can just never get enough shit-talking liberals, though.
No.
It's really gratifying to be able to do that somewhere and have it resonate with other people,
I think it's probably worth considering that we maybe should just talk about do State of the Union type episodes sometimes.
Yeah. I will. Yeah. One caveat I will mention, because I've noticed it, the people we talk shit about, many of them, though not all, are really making some political shifts in their own. I mean, not enough, but around Gaza. like even someone like Ibram X. Kendi, who I loathe, is very, very, very saying the right things around Gaza. So that's just
same with Ta-Nehisi Coates.
It's worth mentioning. Yeah. Coates is really making the rounds in a positive way.
The one that Cornel West labeled him the neoliberal face of the Black liberation movement. Yeah, I always hated Coates for that reason, but critical support for his stance on Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, and he's doing it unabashedly, and he's going around making the media rounds, doing the same thing that he was doing before, but he's doing
really
it now
biting the hand that feeds him.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I keep thinking. Is I keep seeing it. I'm like, good luck on your career, man. After this,
no, but that's awesome though. No one is willing to do that. No liberals, no prominent liberals have been willing to do that. Actually, not no. 18 of them did when they voted with Bernie Sanders to block aid to Israel, military aid to Israel, which
neither of my senators did, which I was surprised. I figured like they would split or something, like Oregon, like one of them would do it and one of them wouldn't or something, but neither of them did.
That's another thing that happened is Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant were indicted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
That's worth mentioning.
It's worth mentioning. That's the first time the International Caucasian Court has gone after somebody who wasn't like a South Slavic or an African warlord.
Yeah, and most of the signatories, excluding except for the UK, Germany, a couple others, have said yes, we will abide by this ruling.
Even Keir Starmer said that the UK would have to abide by it.
Oh, he did? Okay.
He didn't say that they would, but he said that they would probably have to abide by it.
Right. Which is huge.
Germany said they couldn't do it because of their Nazi history, which it makes sense.
If you're Keir Starmer and you're like making a big point of shit. If you're a big piece of shit. But if you are resting upon this notion of upholding the liberal world order, the rules-based order, whatever. You kind of have to, at least not in the direction of the ICC. Right. Now, of course, Israel doesn't even recognize it, but still, even just as a rhetorical device, this is a very positive development.
It's huge. Honestly, it gives a point of leverage for local organizing that you could, everybody who's listening to this could work on doing this. If your national, wherever you live, if your national government has refused to say that it will enforce the ICC judgment like the U.S. government has, you can go lobby your local city council to pass an ordinance saying that it will enforce the ICC judgment if Netanyahu comes within its city limits, and it will direct its police force to arrest Netanyahu if he arrives there. You can pass that legislation in your city council,
I saw
that shit matters.
I saw an interview with John Mearsheimer on a German TV show about the Gaza genocide, and the German host was just like, I don't know if I can agree with you that it's a genocide, and he's like, why not? And then she's like, well, you use words like concentration camp and genocide and ethnic cleansing, and I just don't know if I could agree with that. And he's like, well, and he lays out the definition of what all those words mean. She's like, why can't you agree with that? He's like, and she says, well, because I'll get in trouble. and he says, well, that's understandable. I don't want to get you in trouble. I don't want you to have to say anything that would make you lose your career or whatever. But that just shows the power of the lobby.
Yeah.
That's what he says, the power of the lobby. But I really think that the lobby is of secondary importance to geopolitical concerns.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to write off how important the lobby actually is.
I think the lobby it's a dialectical relationship. The lobby is as powerful as it is because of geopolitical interests.
Right.
Because it wouldn't matter at all otherwise. Like, what would the lobby even have any influence? It would not have any influence if it wasn't of geostrategic importance. Yeah.
But I think that Mearsheimer puts the lobby like first in political importance,
right?
Because he is very invested in the United States being like a force for good in the world, and if it wasn't for the pesky lobby, then we'd be able to do the right thing, like stand up to China,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, bring good things to the world like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's, as to Kevin's point, it is dialectical because there's all of these ideological projects like Christian Zionism that reinforce making it the geopolitical.
Biggest cucks in the world are Christian Zionists, dude.
Yeah. Well, they're courting Armageddon. There's a
openly and happily so.
Yeah.
That's what that's their whole
What's hilarious about that is that like this is I don't see how you could read your scriptures and then say, yeah, we should act in such a way as to speed up the process that we've determined that God is already doing. Somehow we're the agents of enacting God's will because God's just not doing it quickly enough.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at medieval, like specifically Roger Bacon, he wrote a lot about the role that Christians should take in combating the Antichrist, and he said that not we, but like the best Christians, like the pure, the ones who have like purified themselves through the alchemical process, should learn the deep magics that only the angels and the demons know in order to be able to combat the Antichrist.
Well, yeah, because I don't want to say a real Christian, whatever. But what I will say is this. Some Christians, some followers of Christ, almost all of them for a long time even, would maintain very clearly and emphatically that it is the struggle, which is in fact the process of salvation. Yeah. It's not, you're not hurrying along this process of the final judgment. You're to try to ward it off, if you actually believe that's going to happen, is actually your duty. It's actually how you achieve theosis, is when you become worthy of doing combat with the Antichrist. So not only is American Protestant evangelicism, well, I'll just say it's kind of a different religion.
It is. It is.
It's a total fucking heresy, man. Come on.
It's a total
Have
heresy.
the courage of your convictions. Condemn the heretics.
Yeah,
that's true. I do condemn the heretics. Hell, they don't even have an altar. They have a pope, right? That's how you know.
No altars, no priests. What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's why they don't understand the real truth in the enemy being within.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Just as the kingdom of God is within you, so is the kingdom of
the devil,
of Satan.
The kingdom of Mammon. Mammon is the ruler of the. Yeah. Mammon is the god that's worshipped by American Protestantism.
The millenarian dispensationalist, their project is world salvation, and it's about America being blessed.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yep.
No,
all right. Okay, now let's begin.
Now let's start the episode that we meant to start recording 40 minutes ago. So we're going to get
an hour and a half ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We meant to start recording an hour and a half ago, but we've been recording for 40 minutes, stuff that we didn't even mean to talk about. And now we're getting to the parasocial portion of the podcast where we talk about our personal lives. And who has had something cool happen? Me.
I got married.
You got married. Yes, you did.
I got married.
And what looked like a really cool, beautiful ceremony.
Man, it was really beautiful. It was amazing.
Both of y'all were there. I couldn't be there for mostly baby reasons, and also
Ben was also there,
work and money reasons.
Yeah, Jason and Ben were there. Chris was invited, but he was lame and decided not to come.
Yeah, weddings are bourgeois institution.
Yeah, Chris suddenly grew his anti-family politics.
Families are bad. Love is fake. It's just chemical reactions in the brain, and
we all have to
I'm an
antinatalist, to be poly or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. This is now an antinatalist poly podcast, pro poly podcast.
Even knowing
that was my least favorite children's toy.
It still bothers me.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again.
So that's my least favorite children's toy.
What is
poly podcast?
Oh my god,
it's for the 90s kids, if y'all remember really Polly Pocket. Anyway, so yeah, Kevin got married and
it was lovely.
Through a really cool midsummer festival.
Yep, that's still ongoing, and that'll be cool next year. Hopefully, Chris will be able to speak at it.
Yeah, that's the plan. I would like to do that. I guess it's going to be about fascism.
Yeah, that's definitely what I want to set up. Because, there's...
Recruit people to fascism, yeah.
A number of people who want to do this talk, and I don't want them to, because I don't agree with them and their take on what fascism is. They've all got the standard take on it, and I
Northwest sort of like rad lib anarcho view of fascism.
Yeah, fascism is everything and everywhere, and it's when you don't center POC voices enough or whatever, disabled, trans, POC, immigrant, queer, whatever voices enough, then that's fascism.
Right.
You make an acronym that includes all of those identities.
Yeah, good idea, and we should start using it. That'll be our legacy on the left. No, I mean, like, instead of just like that's the way that capitalism always is exclusionary of minority voices.
Yeah, I think that's really the point that I think that's what brings it home, brings the point home, makes it make sense why this is an objectionable framework, is because it's rooted in and reinforces liberalism, right? As though liberalism were opposed to these bad things that we don't want. Instead of recognizing it lets capitalism off the hook for its responsibility for being infused everywhere, all over the world, throughout all of history, with these, regimes of segregation and apartheid, and with whatever, authoritarianism, and et cetera, all these problems that we want to. That people want to label as fascist, it takes the blame off of capitalism, and it puts the blame on this like narrow political regime that came into existence in Europe in the early mid 1900s. If you allow that transfer to happen, then it reinforces this idea that commitment to liberalism is opposing fascism, is anti-fascism, and it's just
you saw that play out.
You're missing the point. This is you're aimed at the wrong thing.
You saw that in the last election, where like Trump is pictured or is portrayed as a fascist for doing the exact same thing that Joe Biden did when it comes to border policy and policing of black communities and everything else, but rude with ruder rhetoric, right?
That's exactly right.
So essentially, and that's actually one of the arguments you hear people make about fascism, is that fascism is there's fascist personalities, kind of like playing off the idea of the authoritarian personality, but that like there's fascist personalities, and fascist personalities can, by adopting like fascist tones of voice when speaking to other people, and the way that they overpower other people in organizing spaces, that's actually fascism happening like in real time, which is I've heard that argued by anarcho liberal types. But anyway, we're talking about personal lives. Personal lives are that we have a problem with liberals who conflate regular ass American capitalism with fascism in our personal lives all the time.
I mean, that is kind of what it means to talk about our personal lives, is to talk about specifically our whatever politics as they impact our personal lives, as well as the fact that we got married, or we didn't all get married, but you know what I mean.
We all got married
to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to round us up and put us in a camp.
No, we're only 50-50 married.
Yeah,
that's true.
I'm glad you decided to join the patriarchy with me, Kevin.
See, I only joined the patriarchy like partially because I got confirmed as a Catholic back on Easter. So I'm not quite there yet. I'm working my way towards being of the patriarchy.
Yeah, hell yeah.
You've been getting a lot of questions from your Marxist brothers and sisters about this.
I really have, yeah. And And it's been good because it's meant I've had to rethink how to talk about my socialism. And also it's made me have to like really, really know my stuff when it comes to my Catholicism. But I think more interestingly is that I have a different group of people that I work with and I talk with about how we might conduct ourselves and live out our duties as Catholics. So I kind of feel like I'm very happy about that. I'm fairly early on in this process, but as a lifelong socialist of some kind or another, from before I could drive up until now, I at least have a new way to act out and conduct myself, and it feels good.
You're also a lifelong Christian with like a lapse of about a decade.
Yeah, that's true.
In your 20s. So your conversion to Catholicism isn't like you found religion for the first time and decided to go Catholic. This is really like a coming home sort of thing, but
it's
coming
true.
Home
really,
and finding out that it's been revamped while you were gone.
Yeah, my return to faith it's not quite a return. It's my faith is sublated through this period of about a decade of my atheism, because if I returned to what the faith I was raised in, I would say that would be a regression. It would be a mistake.
Yeah.
If the world was bifurcated between the evangelical Protestant version of Christianity that I was raised with, or else the post-new atheist, rad lib socialism that I had in my 20s, and those are the only two options, I would still be an atheist. Luckily, I don't have to be either one of those things.
Yeah.
Me and Kevin had a conversation when we saw each other for the first time in what is it now, 14 years in person?
It about almost 15 years, yeah.
About this ruptural, because if you returned, you'd be returning to the sort of American low church Protestantism that we all grew up in. And Kevin was talking about how each of you have, in different ways, gone through this sort of ruptural process. For both of the brothers, returning to a Roman Catholic heritage that is 2 generations back, right? And one technically,
our parents were raised Catholic.
Yeah,
and also
confirmed.
My mother's family and my father's family have been Catholic since they were identifiable as families.
Yeah.
So really, in our generation, all we've done is return back to the traditions of our ancestors. The family history is being restored.
And Kevin's going much further back.
Kevin's going all the way back.
And because of that, our parents have both become Catholics again too.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know what's really cool about all of this is that because of this whole process, now both of my parents have a basic working knowledge of what it means when I say dialectical. My parents understand Hegel better than most self-described Marxists.
Yeah. Our boomer parents that have never studied philosophy ever. Yeah, I was actually Jason's sponsor because I converted to, I don't say that I converted. I say that I was confirmed finally.
Yeah,
I was baptized when I was a child, but now I'm an adult and now I'm confirmed. So I finally went through my confirmation about 5 years ago. So I was Jason's sponsor. So I'm his godfather, essentially.
Speaking of godfathers, that's also something that happened in my life. I became a godfather.
Yeah,
to Chris's daughter.
My baby, who was born a couple of weeks after we've recorded our year 5 in review episode in early December of last year.
Because we have this weird creep where like every single year we do our year in review a little bit later than the year before.
Yeah. So I became a father, and
and she's become a recurrent guest on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she busted in our last episode and screamed as my wife picked her up and took her away. She crawled up to the door and she's amazing. Being a dad is the best thing that has ever happened to me. It's without even a close second. It's so cool. Like every single day is the best day of my life because as soon as I wake up, not as soon as I wake up because I wake up about an hour before my daughter does, but as soon as she wakes up, I go get her and play with her for a couple hours in the morning while my wife sleeps, because she wakes up in the middle of the night to breastfeed the baby. So I take her in the morning so that she can catch up on sleep. But it's great. I love it. It's my favorite thing that I've ever been in my life as a dad.
That's awesome.
And really, that's the only thing that's happened in my life worth note. I finished up my coursework for my PhD, which is a bummer because now I'm just doing comprehensive exam preparation, which means all I do is read books all day, and I don't get to read them in a way that I enjoy them. I have to try to like crush a book in a day and then like outline it and move on to the next one. And I'm so bad at keeping up with the number of books that I'm supposed to be reading between taking care of a baby. Because my wife and I are both at home. So I try to help her out as much as possible so she can get work done. And then she takes the baby while I'm doing work. So really I get about...
You got classes you're teaching, right?
No, I'm TAing. I'm not teaching right now. But gotcha. TAing involves a lot of grading and a lot of tutoring as well. So... I'm doing a lot of the work of a professor.
Right.
The kind of like the way nurses do with doctors. They'll do all of the interaction with the students, and then or the patients, and the doctor just walks in and goes, "Yep," and then walks out. I'm not. The professor does do the lecturing and stuff, which is work for sure.
Oh yeah.
But I think that like when you're a professor, you're teaching a survey class, you're coasting on the lecture that you wrote 10 years ago. And you might have to update it every once in a while, but like you just like bring up the PowerPoint that you made 10 years ago and you just like go through it like nothing and then move on. And then you make the TAs do all the grading.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they give TAs free tuition, is because they need cheap labor, because they pay us nothing. I mean, barely anything.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, but you're getting free tuition, which is a fair point. I am getting free tuition. But yeah, that's it for me.
Once you're done with your comprehensive exams, then you'll be ABD, right?
ABD, yeah. As soon as I'm done with the comprehensive exams, I'll be ABD. Which that's
another
thing I've got to figure out is exactly what my dissertation proposal is going to be. I don't really know yet.
When are you set to take the exams?
Probably the end of next semester or in the fall. I don't really know yet. It really depends. Like because of my my situation with raising a kid at home while trying to do this, it's probably going to take longer.
Puts you behind the curve a little bit, timeline wise. Yeah, gotcha. No, that's cool. I'm not intimately familiar with what the timelines are supposed to be, so it's all you could have told me you were doing it. That was ahead of schedule or something, and I'd have believed you.
But generally, it's about a year is what they in my program they give you to do comprehensive exam preparation. Gotcha. Is 1 year, but I don't know. I might take a year and a half to do it if they'll let me, just because of everything going on right now. Speaking of everything going on right now, I'm gonna go see if Brittany needs help. Sounds like Ava's losing her shit. She was fine. Brittany was stopping her from getting into a bunch of cables.
Yeah.
So
she was screaming like she's being tortured because
I thought she was
her parent is
something.
preventing her from killing herself.
Yeah, exactly. We should probably move on.
We should, but first we should hear from Ben.
Yeah. Well, Jason, you didn't really say what happened in your life either. Well, I mean, you became a Catholic, I guess. Yeah.
I became a Catholic. I became a godfather, and I talked about how being Catholic is making me a better socialist.
You're also doing pretty well Catholic. In life. You're we've mentioned dark times, and I feel like you're walking into the light.
I also didn't mention that I fell in love, and I
gay. That's kind of what I was referring to.
But I don't want to talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah, and also it's too personal. Like
it's way too personal.
Yeah,
I like that when people listen, they could say, "Oh wow, this dude's Catholic," and also can talk about it. That's interesting, and it's so useful. Being in love is not very useful. It's one thing. It's like, okay, Kevin got married. That's cool. Chris has a child. That's cool. Jason has a new girlfriend. It's not really quite news yet,
Right. Yeah.
Got a girlfriend.
I had a big pagan wedding. That was a lot of fun. It was really great to have a big it feels really great these days. I am. That is the thing about my spirituality, and I think all of our spiritualities is they're not personal affects that we put on our Twitter profiles. They are embedded lives.
That's not even in my Twitter profile.
I don't even have a Twitter.
Yeah.
They are lives. They are lifestyles that are embedded in communities of religious practice. Right. That's the thing that I think is important about it. Like whatever your religious practice is, whatever it is that you commit yourself to, for whatever reason, on whatever level, I think that's the key component, is that it must be embedded in community.
Well, it's kind of like how you have talked, Kevin, about how the way you live your personal life, the way you conduct yourself. It's not merely, and it's not only the way of keeping connected with your community because of spiritual questions, but also it's very much a part of your political practice. And in the same way, on Ben's recommendation, about a year and a half ago, I started trying to look into the Catholic Worker as a project I could be involved in, and it wasn't, even though there's a chapter here. But for all kinds of reasons which aren't worth getting into, that opportunity did not quite exist, and now it does. So now I'm able to. It's funny because it's almost like it happened the way it's supposed to happen, even though whatever my vague and irresponsible wishes are, the events transcended them, because now I'll be able to volunteer my time and figure out what can be done and what needs to be done, not just as a socialist who doesn't have a project right now, but also as a Catholic. So it's more meaningful because now I have a ministry that I can directly engage in, that I can use to bring other friends into, and I can also use that ministry to, propagate the workers' gospel.
Yeah.
The other part that's really cool about that is you had returned to the city where you grow up, and you were feeling, it was post-accident, and it was like, I need community and all of that sort of thing. And it's really cool that on the other side of that, you're part of a community. You go to Mass. Yeah. You're part of a Catholic community. And I
go to a Bible study every week.
You're still going, and from the other side of that, not from a side of like just isolation and need for community, but as someone who brings community and bridges community. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
It is really cool. And also, I feel like I want to say this. Everybody should hear this. All the listeners need to know how helpful and useful and important Ben in particular has been in providing a lot of wisdom. And so, talk to your friends. It's very helpful. You can really make a big difference. And don't fucking ask them to Venmo you for your emotional labor, because only a psychopath would do that.
Right.
But people do that.
That was like a popular thing for a little while.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, people.
It's funny actually how
I hope that no one ever actually did it.
Yeah, I don't think a
lot of people did it, but it definitely existed.
Hey, if you ever did it, you're a psychopath.
Yeah, yeah.
If you ever did it, then you have to do a penance by going back to episode 1 of the Regrettable Century and listening to everything all the way through.
You have to also return the money with interest to whoever you received it from.
Oh yeah, definitely.
One of the things
and self-flagellate.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely have to do that as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I think
literally self-flagellate.
Really interesting, of note anyway, about each of our religious practices is that Ben's, unlike ours, has been a lifelong, unbroken commitment, whereas all of us went through a period of atheism,
atheist edgelordism,
religious childhood, atheist edgelordism, then cycling back around to a sublimated religious life. Whereas Ben never did that. He never did the atheist edgelord phase. He's got an unbroken chain from his upbringing, which is, I think, really compelling and interesting.
It's also quite the segue into Ben. Let's hear from you.
What's up? What's going on?
Thanks for pointing out the segue that I just did.
Well, I wanted to make sure he unmuted himself.
Yeah, we're dealing with technological
as
issues
ever.
From Ben. Well, that's interesting. I think that's true, Kevin. And I don't know. It's not that there wasn't like an attempt to disavow certain things, or that I did dispense with many things, but there is a continuity that I've had to recognize and embrace. And that's been sort of like psycho-spiritual recovery of sorts. And
I had this image in my head of a priest with like ICP makeup, like psycho-spiritual.
That's exactly what I meant, you know?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, I wanted to say, Kevin, it was like really, I kind of, you know, as I mentioned, we hadn't seen each other in person since we were younger, less mature versions of ourselves. And when I met you guys in our 20s, I was certainly less stable. You know, I dealt with depression for many years. I'm not ashamed to admit, but it was very interesting to go out there and be kind of in the midst of your community and get to know these people who were perfect strangers to me and witness the commitment you all had to one another and just be sort of part of that for a few days was really meaningful. And, you know, to see you tie the knot with your wife and see how much the community was infused into that commitment was very special to be in the middle of. And I think it's like a really great example of what we all need going forward.
Yeah. Very much so.
You know, Chris and I and Daniel recently, it'll be coming out at some point, but we read some sort of Irish Marxist Catholic theologians, and they were talking about Christianity as a praxis. And that's very much what I think I witnessed in your community. Not that it was Christian, but that it was a praxis. It was something that was lived. And it's not an internalized phenomenon, you know, which is the very, very Protestant way of engaging with that. It's a lived phenomenon with others. It's relational, and by virtue of that, it's political. So, yeah, that's just kind of a looking forward. What can we do? We can commit ourselves to others and expand our love outward. Yeah, in some small way, we do that here on the podcast. I don't know what we're talking about, like what's happened to us. I started grad school.
Yeah.
That's significant.
Another sucker.
It's been a long road, you know, like for all the reasons. I was just continuously never finishing my bachelor's, and I finally did that later in life, and now I'm reorienting toward like a professional something that has possibility as opposed to theater. So I'm kind of like retiring Peter Pan a little bit, and very, very excited about the field I'm going into, which is libraries and archives. And yeah, I'm, you know, just grateful.
Speaking as a former librarian myself, I would say that's a really cool idea, and I kind of maybe even wish I might have taken advantage of that when I had opportunity way back before when I was back in college.
There's a lot of emphasis in the theory of archival studies and our relationship with the past, and as the past is something that is always contested and is, you know, it kind of crosses over to a lot of what we talk about on here. I can't help but think of Benjamin and other thinkers. We're continually wrestling with the past and the future. But yeah, I'm in school. It's a lot. I don't know how people read all of the assigned readings and the independent research at the same time, and
they don't.
They don't. It turns out they don't. But
no, they don't. No one actually reads all of everything.
Yep.
But I've been trying
the
to.
only way to get through grad school is to figure out how to read enough without reading everything. And that's the worst part is like that first semester when you're figuring out how to read for grad school, and they don't really teach you. They might mention, oh, you're supposed to skim and read the introduction and conclusion. But how do you do that? You have to figure it out.
Yeah, it's quite difficult when you're reading very technical stuff. That's not necessarily it's not necessarily skimmable.
For sure.
Like I'm reading a lot of I'm writing this long paper for a class called Television History and Preservation, and I'm writing a paper on televangelism and anti-communism in the 50s, and so much of it is to do with like network. It's like data for for network TV and number of viewers and all the commercial aspects behind that. So it's not skimmable per se. Or anyway, I'm learning, but getting bucked off the horse a little bit.
Yeah,
but
been there, man.
Yeah. We got a second dog in the last year, Arthur.
Nice.
And
Arthur?
Yeah, so Ernie has something to temper her vitriolic hyena outbursts. And we're a family of 4.
That's great, man.
Oh, yeah. I should have mentioned that our fifth member of the podcast from the very beginning, Lucy, who, if you go back and listen to any of our old episodes, you'll hear her contributions to the podcast. My big fat black cat, she passed away.
I'm sorry.
A couple of
rest in peace,
about
Lucy.
A month ago. Yeah. She is my first cat that I ever liked. I'd never had cats before Brittany and I got together, and Lucy was the one who liked me the most, so she was my cat. And she passed away. We still have 3 other cats because we adopted one last year that had babies in our house, and we gave one away and kept the other 2. So now we've got 3 cats, which is a much less crazy number of cats to have. 4 is a lot of cats. 3 is a lot of cats, but 4 is a lot of cats. But anyway, yeah, so Lucy passed away. She's no longer going to be making appearances on the podcast, but I think actually you hear Wolfman making more appearances than anyone else lately.
Well, and also
German Shepherd's barking her fucking head off right now, so I don't know if that's getting picked up.
I can't even hear that.
Oh, I could definitely hear that.
Is Otto healed up from...
It was Wolfman who had
Wolfman. Sorry.
Yeah, Wolfman had a big laceration on his abdomen that we have no idea how he got, but it was pretty bad. He had to get stitches, got 2 layers of stitches. And we had to cancel recording a podcast one day so I could take him to the vet. It was infected, and I don't know. It was not cool. But yeah, that was expensive. But he's doing good. He got his stitches out last week, and he's doing great.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So highlights and lowlights of the podcast is what we have left to talk about, really. And I think that we don't have to be as structured about that as we normally are. Like, pick your top 5 or 3 and then your bottom 3 or whatever. We could just talk about, just go around just talking about which ones we really enjoyed and commenting on that. And then I don't even necessarily know if it's helpful to talk about which ones suck.
Okay, so I think these are my 3 favorite episodes. The one that's called, what do we call it? 1 + 1 is 3, our third campism.
Yes.
Session.
Controversial episode.
Yeah. Which I think it's very useful. It accomplished exactly what we were supposed to. And in the same vein, to front or not to front is one of, I think, what is probably going to have to be a repetitious theme for us.
Oh, about the popular front.
Yeah. And how the way that we mistake and the way we talk about the popular front is not helpful. And then the third one, my third best is also my only worst, which is, I forget what it's called now, World Spirit something. The one about Hegel. And the reason why it's the worst is just because I feel like, just like everything else, it's whenever it's very complex and we can't encapsulate everything all in one episode, I just feel like it's too limited. So
It was called the World Spirit on podcast.
Yeah. My criticism is just that we weren't able to summarize a whole lot of thought in an hour. So it's not that bad, really. But those are my three favorites: Third Campism, the Popular Front, and Hegel. Well,
I'll go next if no one else wants to. I really like the Broken Bones of Belief. Like, I'm not going to put these in any specific order. I'm just going to say some that I liked. The Broken Bones of Belief, or Why They Left the Left, I think is what we called it, where we talked about
that was great.
People who bailed on Marxism to become right-wingers. That was a really good, interesting episode, and it really sort of made me think a lot about the things about Marxism, not Marxism specifically, the things about the left that I find to be so loathsome, and like what it would take for me to abandon my principles to become like the enemy, you know? And turns out I haven't figured that out yet, because I can't think of anything that would make me become pro-system, pro-capitalist, you know?
Yeah. It really strikes me as it's just people who never actually held the commitment in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
I just can't imagine. Well, conversions do happen. That is a real thing, but I don't know. I think for the most part, those people just never actually held the commitment in the first place.
Well, right. I mean, I think Chris, you might have said this on the episode, but part of what immunizes at least the four of us is how actively we've been deconstructing our Marxism for so many years.
Yeah.
That it isn't really, like you said, it's not a shibboleth that can sort of you can lose your faith and fall into kind of a vortex that leads to conversion on the opposite side.
Right.
Which
I mean, if I was
that's ML is the perfect,
exactly,
avatar for that.
ML and Trotskyists, they're the perfect, and also Maoists. They're the ones that most of the most prominent defections come from are the most like most sectarian and like hardline versions of like we look at Whittaker Chambers. He defects from the high Stalinism, right? And then people like David Horowitz, who was a Maoist, and then was it William Crystal, who was a Trot of some sort, some microsect of Trots. But yeah, and it really is like that religious conviction, and the thing. Whenever I abandoned Christianity, it was over like fundamentalist interpretations of Scripture that said like, if you don't agree with all of the Scripture, then you don't agree with any of it, so you must be an apostate of some sort.
Right, like if you take anything to be a metaphor, like all the other Christians in the world, then you're an apostate.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say it's perhaps fundamentalism generally is if you don't agree with a very specific interpretation of every single word in the Bible.
Yeah, exactly.
You're an apostate or whatever. So it's like I feel like the position I've generally taken on fundamentalism in general is that it is always and everywhere essentially nothing more than a cultural chauvinism of one kind or another that has no bearing on whatever the religious text that people point to or even religious authorities that they point to. It's a much more intelligent reading of the text itself will tell you something completely different than whatever position they're espousing almost every single time. And they just refuse to do that because it's not about the Scripture. It's not about the whatever. It's a cultural chauvinism. It's this is what I know and am familiar with, and it makes me feel comfortable because it's what I was raised around, and I don't like anybody who isn't that.
Yep.
And that's what's so important. Sorry, that's what's so important about contextualizing these currents of apostasy. Like, they're not born purely out of opportunism, aka or a la Christopher Hitchens in the latter part of the century. It's this, well, we should keep in mind, whatever our critical solidarity and fidelity to sort of the communist project and looking at the Soviet Union, the party that Whittaker Chambers was a part of had some horrible aspects,
right?
And all the sort of villains that wound up becoming betraying the cause had genuine grievances against that culture of Stalinist organizing.
And we mentioned, like, at the time, like, dropping out of politics altogether. Yeah, that makes sense. But becoming what Whittaker Chambers became, absolutely, like, inexcusable. But Whittaker Chambers' main motivation was his religion. And he saw, like,
that's true,
Stalinist communism to be the ultimate foe of religion. Which, like, I don't know, if you look at what happened in Stalin's Russia, it's kind of, Stalin actually reverses the anti-religion bent of the early Bolsheviks and reestablishes the church as like a essentially part of the state structure.
It's funny because that was actually one of my previous, much older, one of my criticisms of the Stalin era.
Right. Was for doing the same thing Napoleon did, right?
Yeah. That was back when I was more of a rad lib.
But, like, I think that also American communists were probably a lot more anti-religion even than
definitely.
Russian communists were at the time, specifically in the 1930s and 40s.
Definitely a huge mistake of Marxism, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Then the Anti-Fascism of Fools episode I really liked because I really love talking about fascism because it's one of the things that I study and I feel like I have stuff to contribute. And it bombing on libs for misusing fascism is like an all-time favorite pastime of mine. And I thought that was really prescient because of what was going on in the world at the time during Kamala Harris's just absolutely stupid and abysmal campaign that was really only about, like, it had 2 points. One is like, hey, I'm a woman of color. And the other one was, hey, Trump's a fascist. So, like, talking about how Trump's not actually a fascist and how that word actually has a definition. You can't just make up new definitions for things that you don't like or apply that definition to things that you don't like, whatever. So, yeah, I like that episode a lot. And then, of course, probably my favorite episode of all was the one where I talked about Strasserism versus National Bolshevism.
Oh, yeah. We've gotten some interesting feedback about that, too. Just like people saying, like, I really like how detailed and informative this is. People like it whenever you know things and then you talk about them.
Well, instead of just talking out of your ass like we oftentimes do. I
don't have enough time to know as much as I do about the thing that I study and for my PhD about all the stuff that we talk about.
Toward that end, probably some of my favorite episodes are when Jason, you and Chris do a deep dive on some Soviet bloc countries' history and
which
how
is one of my minor foci.
Came to be Soviet or whatever, and its development through that period. Those are super interesting, super informative, and they always just get left out in the broader discussions on the left that do nothing but talk about Russia in 1917 and China in 33 or I don't know, whatever year it was that China had the 42. I don't know. I don't remember.
49 is when it was established, formally declared, but like you could date it back to 33 would have been the founding of the Jiangxi Soviet Republic. So I don't know.
It was long process.
Yeah, it was a long process. They had a very long march.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, these other instances of attempts at socialism, which were less pivotal moments in history, but still incredibly important lessons in
Those are fun.
And how this shit plays out in practice is incredibly useful, important. I think I also like I liked when Jason and I did a deep dive on liberal socialism.
That was a really good episode. It would have been my number 4.
Super. It was really, really cool to get a real clear, cogent, coherent definition on the label and on the category, and be able to understand it, and at least for myself, take the position of my position on the subject is I disagree with them for specific reasons. I think they're wrong, and if they take leadership of the socialist movement as they currently have, they will lead the movement in the wrong direction. But I would still regard them as comrades and indispensable part of establishing a socialist future.
And distinct from liberals. We often are taking apart the part of the left that is essentially going all in on liberalism without saying so. And that's a distinct thing from liberal socialism, which was very necessary to talk about.
And then finally, I'd say I really like our third camp episode, because that was when I first debuted calling myself a third worldist and made everybody fucking hate me because I said that. And then followed up with that by doubling down on it on the episode that I also liked, where we figure out which tendency is correct.
Like FDR, Kevin welcomes your hatred.
Exactly.
I don't think you got any hatred, just a lot of people disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I disagree.
Including us. Yeah.
Well, I think I agreed with you while disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Ben's more dialectical than the rest of us.
Well, yeah, because I know, unlike most Marxists, I don't view dialectical thought as axiomatic ping pong, where you're just like, oh, this and this. It's much more cross-contaminated.
Yeah. I just like your examples. Like, it's not like whenever you're like, oh, this and this. It wasn't clear before, but now that you gave that example, it's very clear.
Well, it's better than doing like a swirly sign that no one can see on the listening.
That's listening back to that episode recently. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess my brother is on the spectrum. Like, trying as hard as he can to no, you all need to understand what I'm saying. And I'm like, dude, they get it. It's a swirl. It goes up. Come on, move on.
The third time I do it, it will be very clear, and I will do it. I even have an episode in which I plan to do it, but it won't be this one.
Another.
We're on the spectrum together, Jason.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm not. I'm just a bully.
So we have.
Wait, is it my turn? You gonna skip?
It is your turn. Yes. We definitely will be editing all this out anyways because of the echo.
Oh yeah, edit everything I say out then.
Yeah.
All right, go, Ben.
Well, so I really, I echo your. I also really liked the apostasy episode, Chris. That's actually goes back to conversations Jason and I have been having over coffee for a while. But I also really liked having the episode where we had Byron on.
That was good.
Oh, yeah. That was really fun.
Internet psychobabble and its consequences. I just thought that was a really good interrogation of something that affects everyone.
Right. I thought it was good.
It was.
Someone, I don't remember who said it, but someone on the on our Discord was just like, "Is it really that big of a problem?" And I'm like, "Damn, I don't know. I spent a whole hour talking about it. Obviously, I think so.
It is a very big problem.
I think so too. Well, yeah. And also, so Byron obviously had opinions about it as a professional in the mental health field. You're dating a professional in the mental health field, Ben?
Well, my partner's in grad school as well for social work.
Okay.
So yeah,
I didn't realize that. Okay, cool.
It's another parasocial bit of news.
Yep. Ben has a girlfriend, or sorry, partner. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we're on year 11, so
okay.
I think Texans would be common law married, right?
Right.
It doesn't take
after
much
7 years.
Texas.
Oh, okay, 7.
Yeah.
I think it's less than. I'm pretty sure it's less than that. In Texas, it's like just a couple of years, or maybe even less. And it's basically like if you hold yourself out as married, then boom, you're married.
Sick.
Well, that's pretty standard in Anglo-Saxon law. That goes all the way back to England in the medieval period.
Anyway, sorry.
Hey, Ben, what are your favorite episodes?
The other one I really liked was when we had Daniel on to talk about his paper.
Yes, that was good.
Ideology, fetishism, and apophaticism. I think we really mined some good
really
stuff.
Good
and preview, we've got another episode with Daniel coming on, talking to me and Chris. Might have mentioned.
Yes, that should be coming out next, I think. No, this comes out next and then that one. Right, Jason?
And
whatever.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
I also think the deep dives into, like Strausserism, etc., are just completely unique. I don't think anyone else is making that kind of content. It's hyper specialized, and I've never heard it anywhere else. So I'm just really grateful for that. The Slovak socialism and the Strausserism episodes are really special.
Thanks.
Hell yeah.
I like those a lot too, because that's my projects basically. The Slovak socialism and Hungarian socialism episodes are really cool because it's stuff that's peripherally related to my field, which is Weimar Germany, that interacts with it really well, but that I don't necessarily have time to focus on in my studies. So by doing these episodes, I get to expand my knowledge of them. And I'm always bringing in my Marxism knowledge, my stuff that I know from being a Marxist, into my professional knowledge. And people are like, how do you know so much about that? And I'm like, oh, I went to communism. So, we know all about this sort of thing. Is that it, Ben?
Well, I guess it's worth mentioning that some of these are still Patreon only. So in order to listen to them in full, you got to subscribe for throw in your hard-earned $2.
Some of our Czechoslovak socialism episodes have been made public. I think maybe, what do we have? Just the Slovak socialism and the Velvet Counter-Revolution episode are behind the paywall.
And the tragedy of the Hungarian Soviet Republic.
Right. That's sort of peripherally related.
Also Daddy Masaryk.
Oh, that's right.
The prequel to Czechoslovak socialism.
Daddy Masaryk and Czechoslovakism. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there's still incentives for you to sign up to our Patreon for a whopping $2 a month. People have said that we should create a higher tier, but I'm like, dude, I don't know. What are we going to get? What more? I don't have anything else to give you. I'm sorry. You can pay more if you like. Maybe I should make a solidarity tier where you could pay $3 if you want. I don't know.
A t-shirt. We can make t-shirts.
I would like to make a t-shirt with our excellent new logo that our comrade Daniel made.
I super dig the new logo. I really do.
It's cool.
Yeah, me
cool
too.
As hell.
Actually, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit.
Okay. The logo is, if you're looking at your podcatcher or whatever, you'll notice that it's a hammer with a crossed quill inside of a triangle that is surrounded by three other triangles. And there's some symbolism at work here, folks. The hammer and the crossed quill are pretty obvious what they are. Intellectual labor and manual labor. And it's actually
more than that too, though. It is mental and manual labor, but it's also industrial and pre-industrial, because we have it's a kind of a callback to our romanticism, which is a common thread that runs all throughout the podcast, but it's really only been officially referenced and investigated once or maybe two times in the first year.
Yeah,
but that's another thing I want us to at some point I would like to circle back and make it a point to kind of reassert the romantic strain that we at least in our thought.
Also, I had to give a shout out to the New Zealand Socialist Societies, because I definitely was not uninspired by their hammer and quill in their logo, and they're heavily influenced by William Morris, as are we.
Yeah.
So this is also a symbol of the hammer and the quill is also a symbol of Christian socialism that goes back to the 19th century. On top of being the logo of the Czechoslovak National Socialist Party, which I always add this caveat, has absolutely nothing to do with German National Socialism. It was merely a social democratic party that sought to to break away from Austria-Hungary and establish Czechoslovakia as a national entity of its own.
Right. For the Germans, their socialism was a kind of a rhetorical addition to their nationalism. And for the Czechs, their nationalism was co-equal with their socialism.
It was a programmatic extension of their socialism.
Right. Yeah. And that was actually the party that Masaryk never belonged to that party, but it formed out of the Young Czechs party as a breakaway from it that Masaryk was once part of. And then once Masaryk became president, he advocated for the Czechoslovak National Socialist Party. And that was like his successor, Edvard Beneš. Yeah. That was his party. And so he had very close ties to Tomáš Masaryk.
Yes, like I really liked our old logo. I like the radio tower a lot, but I also just kind of feel like we've changed kind of a lot over the years.
Yes,
and our logo should reflect that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the triangle with the 3 triangles on it is like another way of representing a diagonally upward spiral.
Yes.
Yeah. For everybody who's not watching the video, they're just listening to how I'm constantly trying to figure out how to illustrate the dialectic as in visual form, with dialectical movement rather. You can just look at our logo now.
Yeah.
So our new logo is like it's a sort of stylized version of Hegel's attempt. It's Hegel's own notebooks. He draws a symbol of dialectic, but it's also it's a socialist emblem. Mental manual labor, etc. And it's also it's just a perfect expression of our rejection of the kind of ideology of progress and scientism.
Yes.
Not in favor of not so much like looking backwards, but more like going back, but of sublating that which is rooted in the past, so through that which is rooted in the present.
Right.
So I think that our logo is not just cool. Daniel's great for making it. It's also it's maybe a little bit more true to what we are trying to do on the podcast.
And this is all based off a sketch that I made that sucked, that Daniel actually did a good job of making it not suck.
I like it enough to have done this.
Oh, yeah. Jason is showing the viewers his tattoo.
Shit, that looks good.
The hammer and quill
committed
inside
to
of
the podcast. Yeah.
We all have to get it. Yeah. Sorry. No, you don't have to trace, Ben. Jason has been like the biggest advocate for this new logo. It took a really long time to get done because Daniel and I were both really busy, and he would send me like a version of it, and I would just look at it and be like, yeah, that's all right. And then like not respond for months, and then finally get back to him and be like, oh, hey, by the way, I don't like this or that or this. And then he would change it. Then he would take a really long time to get back to me, and then I would take a really long time to get back to him. We were both really busy, and like we did have a deadline though, and that would be by the time November rolled around, and we did finally get it done by November. So I'm stoked about that. I really like it. And we are going to have t-shirts, by the way. I just have to figure out how best to make them.
I got to call Ben out because he said something in the chat, which would have been very good to have said with your voice instead, so we could talk about it.
You were already talking, so I was trying to feed you a line.
Yeah, but you had a line, and it was a good one.
What's Ben's line? What is the line, Ben?
Well, Jason was talking about the logo and how we're not just, what did you say, trying to go backwards in time or regress. I suppose we have grievances with modernity, but we are not trying to go back, like we're not pursuing a fantasy. And Benjamin, excuse me, I think he basically said we need to rescue the past and rescue the dead, and
right.
That's distinct.
Yeah.
I was thinking. I was having Benjaminian thoughts while Jason was saying that, but I didn't say anything. Well, you and I were on the same level, though, Ben.
Yeah, everyone should always say the things that they're thinking when they're useful and interesting like this.
Yeah, I don't know. You're on a roll, though. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Well, right. So just a final thought on the logo. As we try to make sense of and articulate this kind of a distinctly different political and philosophical shift that I think has been occurring for us over the last 6 years, which I think very much needs to occur for the whole left or whatever. What calls itself a left for the socialist movement, such as it is.
Yeah.
And I think our logo is kind of like our song, because we have a new song as well, even though it's a year old now.
Yeah, that's good.
The introduction of these two distinct things, I almost think of it as like the closure of a chapter and the opening of a new one. Not so hard and fast as like, as of November 2024, we have a new way of thinking about things. But I do think it's somewhat different than what we started with, which is why I wrote it here. It's like, what are we aiming for?
Yeah.
Like, are we just venting? Because I kind of think that maybe that's what we started doing, but I don't think that's the case anymore.
I don't think it was ever just. That's the thing, though, is the way that you phrase that. Are we just venting? It is undeniably the case that we started as and have continued to be and still are today a project of venting.
Yes, forever.
But it's the addition of the word "just" that I think makes it objectionable. No, I don't think even to begin with we ever were just venting. I think we were and are venting as part of a process of trying to figure something out. We found ourselves in a place of irreconcilable frustration, feeling like an immovable object colliding with what's the thing? The unstoppable force colliding with an immovable object, and just finding ourselves in total failure, isolation, and not feeling like we have the tools or capacity to find our way out. So we got together to knock our heads together, vent our frustration about that position, and say, so what the hell is going on and what do we do about it?
That's very well put, even.
Yeah.
Also, it hasn't just been lashing out. I can speak for the time I've been on the show, but also all the older episodes. The ruthless criticism of everything that exists has also included self-criticism, right? Processing
very much so.
Our collective experience on the left as it has been in our lifetimes, and admitting we're letting go of what does not serve us, and it's important. It's important to be able to voice that, whether it's just venting or not. In order to transcend it, we have to name it and call it out and release it.
Рабочие и крестьяне смогут прожить без нас некому будет установить порядок, определить работу, вернуть труду. Без нас все развалится и государство